She invited me in, and my whole life changed. I didn't expect anything different that day. It was just another routine shift. 32 stops, dented van gas station, coffee barely warm. The same delivery uniform I'd worn 5 times that week. My name tag sat crooked on my chest, a half-hearted badge of survival in a city that barely noticed I existed. At 23, I wasn't chasing dreams. I was just trying to make rent without breaking down mentally or mechanically. I had no idea that the next door I'd knock on would change everything. It wasn't the kind of house that needed a second glance. Modern, sleek, rich. You know, the type, glass panels that practically scream "don't touch," and a garden that looks like it was clipped by tweezers. My sneakers didn't belong there. Hell, neither did I. But I rang the doorbell anyway, just like I always do. Package in hand, a name on a slip, and then she opened the door. She looked like confidence wrapped in silk. Elegant, sure, but real, like someone who'd been through something and made peace with it. Her smile wasn't flashy. It was calm, grounded. It hit me before I could think. "You can't be a day over 25, I said. I don't know why I said it. Maybe it was the way the sunlight caught her hair. Or maybe I was just tired of being invisible. She laughed, not polite, not fake. A real belly-deep laugh that reached her eyes. And then she said the 5 words that would reroute the entire trajectory of my life. "You just earned a lemonade." She invited me in. I should have said no. There were rules, unwritten and otherwise. But something in me, something that hadn't felt alive in a while, said, "Go." And from that moment forward, nothing was the same. Not where I lived. Not who I loved. Not how I saw myself. Because sometimes all it takes is one sentence, one pause, one door opening in front of you to realize you're not just passing through this life. You're being invited in. Her name was Clara. She said it simply, pouring 2 glasses of lemonade as if inviting in strangers was something she did every week. I stood in her spotless kitchen, awkwardly still gripping my delivery scanner like it could anchor me to reality. The ice in my glass clinked like it belonged in a movie. That whole house felt like a set, clean, line-soft music playing low from somewhere I couldn't see, and art on the walls that probably cost more than I'd made in the last 3 months. "So," she said, sliding a coaster across the counter. "What's your name, Logan?" I replied, trying not to sound too stiff. "Thanks for the drink." "Thanks for the compliment," she smiled. It's been a while since someone said something that ridiculous to me. "You're welcome," I chuckled. It was 100% sincere and about 70% unprofessional. She laughed again. That was the thing about Clara, she made space, not just physically but emotionally. Her presence made you want to be honest even when it didn't make sense. I asked her if she worked from home and she told me about the non-profit she ran. Widows rebuilding their lives, she said. Support groups, housing, financial planning. It started after my husband died. Her tone didn't change. No drama, no self-pity, just facts. "He was on a plane," she continued. "Work trip, heart attack midair. Gone before the plane even landed." There was a silence after that. Not uncomfortable, just real. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "Thank you," she nodded. "It was 3 years ago. Some days feel like yesterday. Some days feel like another life entirely." I didn't try to fill the silence with advice. That's something I'd learned growing up poor with a lot of siblings. Sometimes you just sit with people. That's enough. After a few minutes, she asked if I was hungry. "Not a proper lunch," she said, "but I have banana bread." My stomach betrayed me with a loud growl. "Guess that's a yes?" I smiled. We sat at her kitchen island with slices of banana bread and lemonade like 2 old friends who somehow skipped the getting-to-know-you part. I told her about the job, how I started as a courier 2 months ago because it was the first place that said yes. I didn't tell her about the hostel. Not yet. She told me she hadn't invited anyone in since her husband died. That made me pause. "Why me?" I asked. She gave a small shrug. "You looked tired. Not in a lazy way, but like someone carrying something heavy who doesn't know they can put it down." I didn't know what to say to that. I didn't know what to do with someone seeing me that clearly. When I stood to leave, she didn't ask for anything. She just walked me to the door and said, "Come back." For banana bread or conversation, either is fine. "I will," I said, meaning it more than I expected. That night, back at the hostel, the room felt smaller than usual. The peeling paint, the mildew stink, the guy snoring 3 bunks over it all pressed in on me. I couldn't stop thinking about her house. The space, the stillness, the way she looked me in the eye when she talked. I didn't text her the next day, or the next. I didn't know how. I kept telling myself it was just a kind gesture, that she probably forgot about me 5 minutes after I left. But 2 weeks later, I still hadn't stopped thinking about her. So on my day off, I finally dialed her number. It rang once, then twice. Hello? Her voice was the same calm, low grounding. Hey, this is Logan. From the delivery? The lemonade? The 25 joke guy. She cut me off gently. I was wondering when you'd call. I saved your number, she said. I figured you either chickened out or didn't care. Bit of both, honestly. Well, she said, now that you've done it? Come by? No pressure. Just lunch. That's how it started again. I showed up in my only clean shirt, holding nothing but a hopeful smile and a whole lot of nerves. She opened the door like she'd been waiting, not anxiously, just ready. Like she knew I needed that moment more than I understood myself. The lunch was simple: chicken couscous, roasted carrots, better than anything I'd had in weeks. I told her more this time about growing up in a small town raising brothers while my parents worked 2 jobs each, about how I'd saved for 6 months doing whatever I could, detailing cars, stocking shelves, unloading trucks just to get a bus ticket out of there. She listened. Not the distracted kind of listening people do when they're just waiting to talk again. She was with me. You didn't just leave for yourself, she said softly. You left for them. I nodded. I want to make enough so my parents can rest someday. So my brothers have options, real ones. She smiled. That's rare. Most guys my age are chasing something else entirely, I joked. There's nothing wrong with ambition, she said, as long as it doesn't hollow you out. Before I left that day, she said something that caught me off guard. You know, she said, I have a guest room. You wouldn't have to keep living wherever you are. I blinked. Wait, what? No strings, no expectations, just a room, a bed, a door that closes. I wanted to say no. I really did. It felt like too much, like charity, like I didn't deserve it. But that night, I lay in my bunk listening to a fistfight erupt in the hallway over stolen cigarettes and thought maybe I'm not supposed to say no this time. I moved in the next day with 1 duffel bag and 0 plans. Clara didn't treat it like charity. That was the first thing I noticed. When I moved into the guest room, she didn't hover or ask questions. She showed me where the clean towels were, handed me a spare key, and said, "Make yourself at home." That was it. No rules, no quiet hours. No passive-aggressive hints about pulling my weight. She didn't act like I owed her anything. And that, more than anything, made me want to give her everything. The guest room was quiet, tucked in the back of the house with a window that overlooked her garden. The bed was soft, so soft I almost didn't believe it the first night. The sheets smelled like lavender. The silence was the kind that lets you think clearly, not the kind that makes you feel alone. I started waking up early again, earlier than I had in months. I'd make coffee, sometimes breakfast, if I felt brave enough, and we'd sit in the kitchen like old friends. She wasn't a morning person, but she made an exception for me. Just sitting there sipping coffee with her, it felt like I belonged somewhere for the first time in years. At work, I found myself smiling more, laughing. My boss even joked that I must have gotten laid. I didn't tell him the truth that I hadn't touched Clara, not once, but that she was the most intimate part of my life. Because here's the thing no one tells you, real closeness doesn't always come with sex. Sometimes it's the way someone remembers how you take your coffee, or how they ask if you're okay without making it feel like an interrogation. One night, Clara knocked on my door around 10 p.m. I opened it half asleep. Everything okay? She was holding a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. I had a hard day, she said. Can I borrow your ears? We sat on the back porch, wrapped in blankets, sipping wine like teenagers trying not to get caught. She told me about a woman at her nonprofit who'd relapsed, disappeared, left her kids behind. Sometimes I feel like I'm not helping anyone, she whispered. You are, I said. You help me. She looked at me, then really looked, and something in her eyes softened. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. It was something more raw than that. Something that asked, "Can I trust you with the broken parts of me?" I didn't touch her hand. I didn't lean in. I just stayed. That became our rhythm. We talked, we ate, we shared the same space like we'd been doing it for years. Slowly, quietly, the grief around her started to soften. One Saturday, I found her in the garage, rummaging through a box of old photos. She looked up and smiled sheepishly. "Spring cleaning," she said. 3 months too late. She handed me a photo. It was her and her husband standing outside a bookstore mid-laugh. She was younger, sun-kissed, and alive in a way I hadn't seen before. "You loved him," I said. She nodded. "With everything." I didn't ask more. I didn't need to. But later that night, when I walked past her room, her door was cracked open. She was sitting on the bed, photo in hand, tears falling silently. I stood there for a moment, heart aching. Then I knocked gently. She didn't speak. She just scooted over and patted the bed beside her. I sat down. Neither of us said anything. I didn't try to fix it. I just let her lean against me. That's how trust is built, not with grand gestures, but with quiet, consistent presence. A few weeks later, everything changed. It was a Sunday afternoon. We'd spent the morning painting her garden fence, me in overalls, her in a ridiculous wide-brimmed hat that made me laugh every time I looked at her. The sun was hot. Our shirts were speckled with white paint. It was one of those days that feels suspended in time, like nothing could go wrong. And then her sister showed up. Her name was Elise, and she was every bit the opposite of Clara. Polished, stern, eyes that scanned me like I was an unapproved accessory. "Oh," she said flatly, "you didn't tell me you had company." "He's not company," Clara said calmly. "He lives here." Elise blinked. What?" I stepped forward awkwardly. "Hi, I'm Logan." She ignored my hand. Later, I heard them arguing in the kitchen. Elise's voice was sharp, clipped. "He's a child, Clara. You can't save everyone who rings your doorbell." "I'm not trying to save him," Clara snapped back. "He's saving me. I shouldn't have heard that. I wasn't supposed to." But it wrecked me. That night, I packed my bag. She found me at the door. "Where are you going?" she asked, eyes wide. "I shouldn't be here," I said. "I'm just complicating your life." "Is that what you think?" she whispered. "You don't owe me anything," I said. "You've already given me more than anyone ever has." She stepped closer. "But I want to." The air between us shifted. That familiar heat rose. Not lust, not even love, just something rare, mutual knowing. Still, I shook my head. "You deserve someone who has it together, who doesn't live in your guest room like some lost puppy." "Maybe I do," she said. "But I want you." And then finally she kissed me. It wasn't hungry, it wasn't desperate, it was a whisper, a promise. When she pulled back, she looked terrified. "Don't go," she said. "Please." I dropped the bag. That night I didn't sleep in the guest room. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight was bleeding softly through the curtains. Clara was still asleep, her back to me, her hair spread across the pillow like a messy halo. For a moment I just lay there and stared at her, this woman who had every reason to shut the world out and yet had let me in. And not just into her house, but into her life. I didn't move. I didn't want to break the stillness, the peace that had settled over us like a warm blanket. It had been months since I felt that kind of quiet in my chest, months since I didn't feel like I had to run from anything. Eventually she stirred. Slowly, the way people do when they're not ready to leave a dream behind. "Hey," she mumbled, voice still coated in sleep. "Hey," I whispered back. She rolled over her hand, reaching instinctively for mine. That small gesture did something to me. It undid me. She didn't say anything else. She didn't have to. That morning we stayed in bed longer than we should have, stealing a few hours from the world outside. When we finally got up, I cooked breakfast and she made coffee. It felt right. Easy, like we'd been doing it for years. But real life always waits. By midweek, I noticed a change. Clara was quieter, more distracted. She'd zone out in the middle of conversations, then snap back and smile like nothing happened. But I could see the worry in her eyes, the kind she didn't know how to hide. One evening she came home late from work, her shoulders tight, her mouth pressed into a line. "Bad day?" I asked. She dropped her purse on the table and nodded. "The nonprofit is losing funding. We might have to cut staff. I'm sorry." She sat on the couch, kicked off her shoes, and rubbed her temples. "I keep thinking, maybe Elise is right. Maybe I'm wasting my time." I sat beside her. "Helping people is never a waste. But at what cost, Logan?" She snapped, surprising herself. "What if I give and give until there's nothing left of me?" I didn't say anything right away. Instead, I reached out and gently took her hand. "Then let someone give back to you for once." Her eyes filled with tears. "You're too young to understand," maybe I said. "But I know what it feels like to be tired, to feel like you're drowning in silence no one else hears. And I know what it's like to find someone who throws you a rope when you weren't even asking for one." She broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quiet tears running down her cheeks as she leaned into me and let herself fall apart for the first time since I met her. That night we didn't talk about the future. We didn't need to. We just held each other while the world spun madly on. But the future didn't wait. A few weeks later I got a call. It was from a trade school I'd applied to nearly a year ago before everything fell apart. They'd accepted me into their automotive engineering program. Full ride. Classes started in 2 months. In New York. When I told Clara, she smiled. Genuinely, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That's amazing," she said. "You deserve that." "Yeah," I said quietly. "But it's far." "I know. We didn't talk about it for a few days. We just kept doing the same things, me fixing the back fence, her trimming the roses, shared dinners and soft kisses and quiet mornings. But we were both avoiding the same question. What happens now?" Eventually, one night over takeout, she asked it. "So, are you going?" I didn't answer right away. "I want to," I said. "But I don't want to leave you." She smiled sadly. "You were never mine to keep, Logan. You don't believe that." "I believe in you," she said. "And I want you to go. I want you to have a future that's not just built around me." "And what if my future is you?" I said louder than I meant to. She looked at me, then really looked. And her expression broke my heart. "Don't do that," she whispered. "Don't tie your dreams to someone who's still learning how to breathe again." We sat in silence after that. Long, aching silence. I left the next morning. We didn't say goodbye like lovers. We didn't promise to wait or to write every day. We just hugged, long, tight, trembling. She kissed my cheek. "Go build something," she said. "And you," she smiled. "I'll keep the porch light on." New York was loud, fast, unforgiving. But I threw myself into it. Classes, internships, night shifts. I learned how to design engines, how to read machines like language. But no matter how busy I got, I kept thinking about her. Her voice, her laughter, the way she sipped coffee like it was a ritual. And every night before I went to sleep, I thought about that porch light. After a year, I came back. Not with flowers, not with fanfare, just me, and my tools, and my heart a little steadier now. When I pulled up to the house, the garden looked different, fuller, more alive. There were new wind chimes by the front door, and the porch light was on. I knocked. She opened the door, and for a moment, neither of us moved. Then she smiled wide, real, radiant. "Took you long enough," she said. "I was making something," I replied, and this time I didn't ask to come in. I just stepped forward, and she let me. The days that followed weren't dramatic. They weren't fireworks and cinematic music swelling in the background. They were quieter, like the soft hum of a life starting to stitch itself together. Clara and I moved through routines not built on obligation, but on presence. And still I knew something deeper was brewing beneath the surface, something neither of us had fully faced. It started with the boxes. I noticed them stacked neatly in the corner of her dining room one morning, each one labeled in black Sharpie James, military James, college photos letters. I didn't say anything at first, didn't want to pry, but the sight of them felt heavy, like the weight of a past being gently packed away. Later that night over dinner, she said quietly, "I started going through his things." I set my fork down. "That's brave." "No," she said with a sad smile. "It's necessary." We didn't talk much after that, but something shifted. Clara didn't seem lighter, but maybe less trapped. She had opened a door she had long kept locked, and even though it was painful, she had stepped through it. It was a week later when she asked if I'd sit with her while she sorted more of James's belongings. "You don't have to say anything," she said. "Just be there." So I was. I sat beside her on the living room floor as she pulled out medals, handwritten cards, even a bottle of cologne that still carried his scent. Her hands shook a little as she held each piece of the past. Sometimes she smiled, sometimes she cried. Once she held a photo to her chest and didn't speak for nearly 10 minutes. I didn't interrupt. I didn't offer cliches. I just sat there and let her grieve. And somewhere in that grief, something else was born. Not a replacement, not a new chapter to overwrite the last, but a quiet companionship, a trust, a resilience made stronger by the scars that no longer needed to be hidden. We started walking in the evenings, nothing formal, just us, the sidewalk, and the setting sun. Clara told me stories about James, how he once sang to her terribly off-key to cheer her up during a thunderstorm, how he burned their first Thanksgiving turkey and tried to cover it with cranberry sauce. I didn't flinch. I listened. Because she wasn't comparing. She was remembering. And she was letting me in. One night on our walk back, she suddenly stopped. The street lamp above us flickered, casting a strange glow across her face. "You know," she said, "I used to think my life ended the day James died." I waited. But now she continued, "It feels more like..." It paused. And maybe, just maybe, someone pressed play again. She looked at me, and in that moment, I didn't see the grief. I saw the strength it took to survive it. But life has a way of testing even the things you think are finally steady. One afternoon, Clara got a call from her sister Elise. I was in the kitchen fixing a leaky faucet when I heard her voice rise. "You don't get to question who I let into my life," she snapped. "You weren't here when I couldn't get out of bed. You weren't here when the silence in this house felt like it was going to eat me alive." I walked into the living room just as she hung up. "Everything okay?" I asked. She didn't look at me, just stared at the phone in her hand like it had betrayed her. "Elise thinks I'm being reckless," she said, "that I'm using you to fill a hole I haven't dealt with. Do you think that I asked?" She looked at me then. Really looked. "No," she said, "but it scares me how much I care about you, because what if I lose you too?" I stepped closer. "Then I'll be right here to put the pieces back together, just like you've done." We stood in silence for a long time after that, and I realized this wasn't just about love. It was about trust, about choosing someone even when fear whispers all the reasons you shouldn't. Spring turned to summer. We planted new flowers in the garden, sunflowers and tulips and hydrangeas. Clara said it was the first time she'd wanted to plant anything in years. We fixed up the old guest room into a reading nook. She taught me how to make French toast from scratch. I taught her how to change a tire. It wasn't perfect. Some days grief still showed up like an uninvited guest. A song, a smell, a dream. But she didn't shut me out anymore when it did. One night while sitting on the porch, she asked, "Do you still think I look 25? I smiled. "I think you look like someone who's survived hell and still has the courage to smile." She laughed. "You always know what to say." "I mean it," I said. "You're beautiful. Not just because of your face or your laugh or your legs, though, to be clear, those don't hurt." She rolled her eyes. "But because you wake up every day and choose to keep going. That's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." She didn't respond right away. She just leaned over and kissed me, slow, intentional, grateful. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't just a chapter in Clara's life anymore. I was part of her story. But there was one final step she hadn't taken. We never touched the small box in her closet. It sat there untouched, unopened James's wedding ring, his last letter from deployment, and the keys to the lake house they had dreamed of retiring to. One Sunday morning, Clara asked if I'd drive her out there. To the lake? She nodded. I need to say goodbye. For real. The drive was quiet. The sun was just starting to climb when we arrived. The house was small, weathered, but beautiful in its own way. She unlocked the door and we stepped inside. Dust floated in the air like ghosts. Everything was exactly as they'd left it. We spent the day cleaning opening windows, letting the light in. That evening, she asked me to sit with her by the dock. I loved him, she said, holding the small wooden box in her lap. I always will. I know. She opened it. Inside was the ring still polished, a photo of them on the beach, a folded note with James's handwriting, "Wherever you are, I'm with you." She let the wind take the letter, watched it flutter over the lake until it disappeared. Then slowly, she slid the ring into the water. We watched as it sank. She didn't cry, she just exhaled, and for the first time she looked free. That night back at her house, she pulled me into her arms. I'm ready, she whispered. And this time there was no hesitation in her voice, just clarity and peace. There are moments in life when you realize the ground beneath you has shifted not with an earthquake, but with a gentle, irrevocable nudge. That's what it felt like with Clara. It wasn't some whirlwind romance. It wasn't a distraction. It was two people, both a little cracked from the weight of their own stories, finding shelter in each other. Clara never stopped loving James. That was never the goal. Love isn't a pie chart you don't have to carve one piece out to give another. What she gave me wasn't what she had with him. It was something new, something earned, something fragile and fierce all at once. She let me in not because she was lonely, not because she needed saving, but because she finally believed she deserved a life after loss. And maybe, just maybe, I had something to offer her in that new life. There were still hard days, anniversaries, flashbacks, nights where silence spoke louder than words. But we held space for them, for the grief and the laughter, for the past and the present. We didn't rush. We didn't try to replace anything. We just stood next to each other quietly, building something real. And if you've ever known grief, if you've ever loved someone and lost them, you know that's no small thing. Because healing doesn't come with trumpets. It comes in the form of morning coffee shared in pajamas. In the way someone remembers how you like your eggs. In the slow, silent exhale of someone who no longer flinches at being touched. It comes when someone looks at you and says, I'm glad you're here. Clara said that to me just last week. I was under her kitchen sink fixing a leak, cursing the wrench in my hand. She leaned against the doorway smiling and whispered, I'm glad you stayed. And I knew she didn't just mean that moment. She meant the storm, the silence, the grief, the fear, all of it. I had stayed through all of it. And so had she. So if you're watching this right now, wondering if love is possible after heartbreak, if joy is possible after loss, let me be proof that it is. That you can carry your past without letting it bury your future. That you can love again, not instead, but alongside everything that came before. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be ready. You just have to be open. If this story touched you, share it. Leave a comment below. Tell us about the moment you knew you were healing, or about the person who helped you get there. And if you haven't found that moment yet, hold on. Sometimes healing arrives in a storm. Sometimes it starts with a joke. And sometimes it begins when someone invites you in. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel if you believe in second chances. Because here we don't just tell stories, we witness the heartbeats behind them. Until next time, keep going. You're not alone.